And there it is, 12 noon. Welcome everyone. Jeff Jensen, Director of Community Programs here with Trees Forever. And boy, have we got a fantastic Stewards of the Beautiful Land webinar set up for you all today. We have Bree Hull, our Northeast Iowa Field Coordinator, who is going to take us through the entire process of seed harvesting, cleaning, and preserving. Just a reminder, if you cannot hear us, but you can see this slide, you can call in using the phone number there through the GoToWebinar system. Certainly, welcome everyone. This is one of many of our monthly webinars that we have, and then we have our field days that are coming up here. We'll get to that in just a moment. Speaking of those webinars, encourage you to put these on your calendar, or better yet, go to the Trees Forever calendar where you can actually register for the upcoming webinars here, June 26th, July 10th, July 24th, August 7th. We've got some great webinars coming up here in July. Wanted to mention the Facebook group. So we do have a Stewards of the Beautiful Land Facebook group, a great amalgamation of folks that have attended over the years, and our very own Bree is helping to curate that. Thank you, Bree. And so stay tuned there for information if you want to share something. We love to hear from folks from all across the state about natives they're seeing in their roadsides or in their prairies, stuff like that. Speaking of upcoming webinars, July 10th, water quality and roadsides is going to be our focus. And then we're going to follow that up with water quality and aquatic invertebrates. So two fantastic topics related to water quality and natives and roadsides. So be sure that you check that out. Here is our agenda. We have some upcoming field days I wanted to make you aware of, and then we're going to get right to the main presentation here. So field day wise in July, we're going to start off over in Harrison County, July 9th, an invasive species identification and removal. That's going to be a lot of fun over by Woodvine. Again, check out the Stewards of the Beautiful Land, a landing page on the Trees Forever website for details on a starting time and a map. And then Friday, July 12th, tree ID care and maintenance. And that's going to be with Forester Patrick Moore at a Crapo Park, their outdoor classroom in Burlington. So if you're down in that neck of the woods, plan to join us for a wonderful presentation there to learn all about tree ID care and maintenance. And then our very own Bree on Saturday, July 13th, prairie walking, a little history lesson. That's going to be at the Darrell Smith Prairie on the campus of the University of Northern Iowa. And Bree might have more to say about that before or after her presentation. And then finally in Story County, we're going to have a summer prairie walk with Dr. Tom Rosberg at the Doolittle Prairie in Story County. And that's a remnant prairie, fantastic little prairie. And Tom is so knowledgeable. So we get the A+ treatment there, courtesy of Story County Conservation Board. I want to thank Bree for putting together this fantastic presentation. And let's get this turned over to you.
Okie doke, here we go. There we go. All right, so yes, my name is Bree Hull, and today I will be talking to you about seed collection, cleaning, processing, the whole shebang, one of my favorite things. And so first of all, it's very nice to meet you all. I am the Northeast Iowa Field Coordinator for Trees Forever, started back in November. I have a bachelor's in biology with minors in environmental science and leadership from Wartburg, and I am a 2-year Green Iowa AmeriCorps alum. This is one of my favorite photos that Ann Phillips took. It was at my very first prescribed burn, and I am lighting that prairie. So here's a little roadmap of what we're going to be going through today. So like Jeff said, if you need to get up, stretch, take a break, no worries. This will be recorded and sent out afterwards, and I can talk on and on about collecting seed. So we're going to get going. Good practices. So I have a funny story about this picture, actually. So when Laura Walter took this photo, she was like, you guys just look so happy. You're having so much fun collecting the seed. And we had to burst her bubble and say, no, it was just really, really windy. And you can kind of see us gritting our teeth. It was pretty cold as we were out there collecting those seed heads. So pack your bags. These are the things that you should definitely bring with you when you are preparing to go out collecting seed. So you're going to need a map and a plan, definitely water, snacks, reference photos for what you're looking for, your phone, make sure that thing's charged. Marker, I highly recommend permanent markers and plenty of them because, you know, we lose them. So, stiff bristle brush. Now this one is really, really important. It's similar to how you do with boats when you leave different bodies of water. You want to actually scrub off the bottom of your boots, especially if you're going between remnant prairies, because we don't want to drag seed between sites by accident and cause some issues. Plastic bags, paper bags too, didn't put that on there, but you'll want to bring those, a bunch of them, for your different sites and species, depending on how and why you're collecting them, and you'll be labeling those. Scissors, buckets, gloves, sunscreen, the whole thing. Scissors, you could also bring the clippers, hand clippers. And the buckets, I want to pop up here and I'll show you another way that we do this too. So those are just ice cream buckets that have been cleaned out and you can't quite see them, but we also have these bungees that hook up to them. And you can actually do 2 buckets to a bungee. A good rule of thumb when you're collecting seed is to remain hands-free. So just strap that sucker on and you're good. And if you use ice cream buckets, if you're collecting multiple species at a site, you can actually open up paper bags and just kind of pop them in their different spots. All right, first quiz question in the questions tab, because that's the only way I can see. Do you know what this plant is on the right here? Just looking for common name. Heck yeah, I'm seeing prairie smoke. It's one of my favorites. This was one of the species that I really wanted to see out in a remnant, and this was the first one I ever did get to see. It's one of my favorite pictures. All right, and you want to look your best when you're going out seed collecting. Now, this is an Adobe stock photo, but it was the only one I could find that's showing my favorite fashion trend for seed collection. So things you want: sturdy closed-toed shoes, long socks, long pants, long sleeve shirt, hat, and I will say always bring a spare full set of clothes, or at the very minimum, a spare pair of socks. I cannot tell you how many times a spare pair of socks or clothes has saved me, because you don't know what conditions you're gonna go into, especially in marshy areas, and keeping your feet dry is just, you have to. Now, something I always say, prairies, especially remnants, if they're not, well, there shouldn't be being sprayed, but you will see ticks and insects. So tuck those pants into your socks and it should help reduce those ticks. All right, so golden rules of seed collection. There are a lot, but I'm going to highlight a few. But we do have another question. Does anybody know what this plant is? And we're just looking for that common name again. Fantastic, that is hoary puccoon. Unfortunately, I don't remember off the top of my head the scientific name, but it could be Lithospermum. All right, so here's an overview of our golden rules. Know what you're looking for. Never, never, never pull up entire plants. Know where you're going and be safe. And does anybody know what that plant is? This one, I do know the scientific name, so bonus points. Fantastic. It is prairie rose, Rosa arkansana, which, another thing, this is Iowa's state flower. And when you're collecting seeds for prairie rose, they're actually the rose hips, and they're cute little things, and you can make tea out of them as well. All right, so rule number 1, know what you are looking for. So questions you should be asking yourself, the who, what, when, where, why, how. What species are you looking for? Where do they grow? What are their preferred soil conditions? When do they flower? When do they go to seed? What do the seeds even look like? And then what dispersal method does this plant follow? And if you're wondering what a dispersal method is, that's just how the plant's seeds are spread. So think like milkweed, they have those fluffy seeds. Those are wind spread. If you think about a fruit, animals will eat those. Sometimes they need that additional stomach acid to stratify them, and then they're spread that way. Some are those sticky ones, like they stick to your pants, and when you have a seed stick to your plants, you're just doing your job as a dispersal method. But these are a lot of questions, and you might be wondering, okay, where do I go to get this information? So we'll get into that in just a moment, but we should also think about how different plants look in their different stages of life. So these two are the same plant species taken at the same location on the same day. So if you guys know what this plant is, throw it in the chat, but just look at how different those guys look. One is clearly getting a lot closer to being ready to seed, while one is very tightly compact and still getting ready. All right, and so going even more into that, how different species look at different times. So look at this guy on the left. You can see its pods are starting to grow, really cute little things, one of my favorite plants. But when you see plants in that kind of a picture, that's really easy to identify, right? Reference and observation photos where the species is front, center, clear, background is nice and blurred. You can clearly see what makes the plant that species. Awesome. But when we're out in the field, it might look sometimes a little more like this. Not so easy, but this is a production plot at the Tallgrass Prairie Center, so all the plants in that row are the same species. Does anybody know what this one is? Fantastic. It is Baptisia alba, wild indigo. They have this really nice like soft stalk. It reminds me a lot of asparagus, but the flowers are gorgeous and they have these little leaves that look like they're saying hi to you, especially when they're itty bitty little seedlings. And so the production plot, same species, zoomed out, natural lighting, a little more challenging to maybe identify because there might be some mixed in species, some volunteers, but doable. Now let's look at this one. So this might be like a really healthy prairie that you go out into and you're looking for specific species. Maybe you're looking for those guys that pop right out to you, like the coneflower or the liatris or the butterfly weed. But there are other species that if you're looking at this, you're like, oh no, where do I start? So just get an idea of where you're looking and what you're looking for and be ready to be on the hunt. So going into getting that information that you need. So the who, what, when, where, why, how. So the Tallgrass Prairie Center has this fantastic seed production manual. It is an awesome guide to help you figure out how, like what you're looking for when you're going for seeds and how to process them and plant them. So the website, you'll just go, if you want to navigate to it, you'll go to the TPC's main page. You'll go to plant materials, click down at the bottom, hit native seed production manual. So the native seed production manual, they did this awesome thing where they actually digitized it. So there's a way that you can navigate the whole manual online. They also still have a print version that you can have, and a lot of native seed growers really like those because they can write in notes. So it could also be used as a field guide when you're out there if you maybe want to do a little bit more than just some casual seed collection and planting. And this is what that print looks like. It's a little bit older of a manual. They did do some updates for that digital version, and the older manual is from 2007, so not too bad, but this is what you would look at for the cover. All right, so that next rule, never, ever, ever pull up entire plants. So the plants on the right that I have here, which if you know what it is, throw it in the chat. I did not pull this plant up. I'm just holding the lower stem and pulling it away from the background so I can get a good photo of it. When you're collecting seed out wherever you're at, follow the 20-80 rule. Only collect 20% of seeds on any individual plant. If it looks like someone else has collected or maybe something's foraged the 20%, leave it alone. A big part of what we want to do is make sure that these plants have a population when you come back. And part of that survival is making sure that they drop and spread that seed. That also helps ensure more biodiversity within the species and within the site. So just be very, very careful. And, you know, I'll get a little bit more into it later, but if you pull up a prairie plant, they're very difficult to transplant and you're more than likely going to kill it. And then you remove that entire individual from the gene pool. So we just want to be really careful. And I don't quite see any guesses for what that species is in the chat. Does anybody want to give it a shot? I mean, it's a little young, but he's getting close to blooming. Awesome. So it is lead plant, Amorpha canescens. It's a little bit off. It's got these really soft, fuzzy leaves, and a lot of people mistake it for like a sensitive plant. And one of my favorite facts about this is when pioneers, well, not favorite, because it's a little bit sad, but when pioneers came to the Midwest and the prairies, and they start plowing up the fields, they used to call this the devil's shoelaces because the roots on this are so thick and so strong that it would sound like this loud cracking whenever they would go through, and it would stop entire plows in their tracks. Oops, hit the wrong button again. All right, so next thing is know where you are going. Thoroughly research your sites, please. Reach out to any private or public owners or managers for the land to ask permission to collect the seed. Now, some areas I will say, it's open to recreation, but Collecting seed is taking something from that space. So even if it is open for recreation, please still reach out and ask if it's okay, because you might be going into a remnant area where maybe they don't want you to collect seed. They may be working on a reconstruction and they want to make sure that those seeds drop and spread in that area. So just make sure you reach out and ask. That way also, if you're out there and they see you with all of this gear and looking a little silly, they will have an idea of what's going on, or if they reach out to a manager, they'll know what's going on. Another thing, print, download, and share your routes. That's really, really important. Make sure that you don't get lost, because a lot of these places are a little bit out in the middle of nowhere, county roads and all. And then research other confirmed species observations at your sites. So a good way to do that, I said it before, I'll say it again, iNaturalist is one of my favorites. So I'll go into it a little bit later, but you can look up other confirmed sightings and observations of the species you're looking for, and it does have a map option. And there are other citizen science that you, or websites and apps that you can use. Books are also a great resource. Just go for it. All right, so this is awesome for figuring out where. So now we're kind of getting into a little bit of the nitty gritty. Where on earth are you gonna go to get that seed, and where are you going to go to explore? So Iowa Prairie Network is awesome. They have an entire Find a Prairie page that helps you navigate. You can look up by the managing body, or you can look it up by the county. I love this quote because it's very important to remember when you're out collecting. Ask permission if a remnant is on private land. Prairie plants are wonderful to view in the wild. Removing them robs all of us of their beauty and our natural heritage. They're also hard to transplant and most often die. Therefore, they are best left in their native state for all to enjoy. So please don't remove any plants from a remnant. Just a reminder that we're trying to make sure that this endangered ecosystem survives and that we respect the space. So please do so. But Iowa Prairie Network, awesome resource, very easy to navigate. There are hyperlinks that send you to that website and to maps so you can get to your location. All right, here we go. I've said it before. I said it was coming up. iNaturalist, my favorite app and website. Gotta emphasize it here. All right, so this is what I was talking about, where you can look up a species and get those observations. So this is actually, you can do global, but I'm sticking with Iowa. I looked up cardinal flower. I actually searched by its scientific name, Lobelia cardinalis, but you can look it up by its common name. It just might be a little harder. And it shows you on the map. You can look up by the grid or list, but I choose map so I can figure out where I'm going. You can zoom in as much as you need to, because they do give pretty accurate GPS locations as well. And the best part about it too, if you're a little bit iffy about whether or not that sighting is accurate for the species you're looking for, you can click on the spot that it was, and there should be photos, and you can, confirm or deny that observation. All right, so biggest rule, I know it's at the bottom, but we always have to remember, please be safe. Research your route beforehand. We know that signal can sometimes be cut. Phones are not always the most reliable. Print your route just in case your phone dies or you lose signal, and download your route to your phone before leaving. Most phones allow you to download that route, so even if you go offline, you can follow it. Share your location. Share your route with at least one other person. Let them know when you're leaving. Tell them to reach out to you if they don't hear from you when you're supposed to be back. Most smartphones have a built-in option or app. I personally share through Google my location with my fiance, so he knows where I'm at when I'm skunking around. And of course, ask permission. If you found someone on your private property and you weren't expecting them, you might be a little hostile too. So reach out to any private owner or public spaces to ensure you have permission to collect seed. And if you're in a public space, sometimes you might also be going out during hunting season. And if you call and ask permission, they can give you a heads up before you get out there, and make sure that you're wearing the proper gear if they still allow you. Bring a first aid kit. I don't know about you, but I'm pretty accident prone. I tend to carry a basic one in my glove box at any given time. So just making sure that, have that. Be aware of your surroundings. So another thing about seed collection is you might be looking on roadsides. So Iowa, a majority of the public land is in roadsides, and there's a roadside program where we're trying to get more prairie species in those roadsides. And typically you can collect seed, just follow that rule, but that also means pulling over to the side of the road. So just follow those usual rules. Don't park on the other side at the top of a hill on a gravel road where there's no shoulder. Make sure that you have your hazards lights on. Maybe bring along some safety cones to stick behind your car, that whole thing. Make sure that you are good. All right, methods of seed collection, and this goes into that safety thing again. So you can see we're wearing those orange vests. That day we happened to be going out to a public prairie where in the evening they were doing duck hunting. So we wanted to make sure we were nice and visible. And you can see our double buckets going right there. We also use those buckets to carry our scissors and hand clippers. This day also happened to be very cold, so if you don't know what to do with those old masks that you have, I find that they work fantastic when you're in the field as a windbreak. So when it comes to methods of seed collection, there is not a golden rule. If there's so many weird little things that you do that work, and if you find a way that works, go for it. So manual seed collection is primarily what you're going to be doing. The seed production manual is aimed at both individuals and large seed producers. So it has a lot of information on mechanical seed collection as well, which may not be accessible to you. But like I said, keep your hands free and bring a variety of tools. Scissors, hand clippers, hair combs are actually really great for just slipping that seed right off the seed head. Gloves, because you never know what you're going to be sticking your hands into. If you're collecting rose hips from prairie rose, they do have thorns. Buckets, of course. Bags, make sure you keep nice and organized. So in these pictures, you can see a couple of methods. On the top left, you can see she actually has a little holster for her hand clippers, and she has her bags in her cut up milk cartons instead of ice cream buckets. And she's just zipping those seeds right off the seed head with her hands. Some species you can do that and it's really easy, like Amorpha, since they're nice and fluffy and soft, you can just take them right off. Same thing with Liatris. And then on the top right and bottom right, you will actually see us using sickles. And so that's actually for spiderwort. So for the mass collection of spiderwort in the production plots, so those seeds actually explode when they're done. So to catch them before they explode, Laura Walter figured out a good timing and paid attention to when they were coming into bloom, and found that if you harvested them about a day or two before they were ready to explode, maybe a few had already popped, if you go out with a sickle, collect them, the whole plant, and lay them out on a tarp, as you can see in the bottom left, you can actually save that seed before they go. So we use buckets to make sure to keep them all in one spot. Heads up, if you're going to collect spiderwort, it is very slimy, so I highly suggest gloves, and those sickles are sharp. Maybe if you're out on your own, what you can also do instead of using a tool, you can actually just cup your hand, put the stem between your fingers, and just pop the whole head off. But remember what I said, pay attention to the plant, make sure you don't take too many from one site. Another species that actually has exploding seed is partridge pea, but those actually have little seed pods. And what we do with those is you just pop the little seed pod off and you put them in a paper bag so they can dry out, make sure that they haven't already exploded. And they actually sound like popcorn when they're going, and because the seed pod will split and it'll go all over the place. So just figuring out what works best for the different ones. The production manual actually has recommendations for manual collection. You can also ask others for what they do to collect the seed, get an idea of maybe when they go into seed. You might be coming back to a site a couple of times. You could, because it is very regional, and depending on how the weather has been, you might be there a little too early. So just make a note, maybe drop a pin where you were at, and you'll come back and collect when it's ready to go. Sometimes you might be a little too late, so make a note for next year. Processing seed, oh, so much fun. So this was actually at a volunteer seed processing event, and this was a manual way that we got the fluff off of this seed. Does anybody have a guess of what this plant was? The picture's not the best, but they're these little tiny white seeds and they have fluff on them. It is a forb. It is a goldenrod. You're close with Aster. We actually found the best method for cleaning goldenrod. So we had these ridged trays and these brushes. We threshed them against it to separate the fluff from the seed, and then we put it through a winnow. And if that sounded like a bunch of gobbledygook, we will get into that. So first step that you want to do when you are collecting seed is to dry it. So if you're using plastic bags when you collect, make sure you transfer them to a cotton bag, paper bags, or just in the open air. This avoids mold, clears out insects, and you need to make sure you have good ventilation. Fans are not required, but they are helpful. These photos were taken from the Native Seed Production Manual. Like I said, on the bottom left are the spiderwort. On the right, you can see their setup that they have for when they collect the seed. What they do is they get these giant cotton sacks and they put them in the middle. The bottom you can see is lifted with the grate. They also have these binder clips on the side for when they collect smaller batches of seed in paper bags. So they just clip them on the side and the fan runs through. And we get into the cleaning. This is another cleaning volunteer event that we did. So these are a couple of methods. Like I said, there's about a million different ways you can do it. There are big machines, expensive machines that you can get, but if you're just collecting for yourself, you shouldn't need those. So threshing, removing seed from the seed heads. So they're, like I said, big fancy machines will do it, but another thing that you can do is just get a big plastic bucket, put on some nice thick like hiking shoes, work boots, and just stomp on them. So pale purple coneflower, they have those big spiky seed heads. You're gonna need to thresh those, and if you get a bunch of them, you don't really want to do it by hand, and it can be pretty rough on you and even poke through gloves. So it's better just to, you know, stomp on them. Winnowing, separating seed from chaff by weight, which is actually in the photo. That, if you can't see it, that is actually, we called it trash fan because it is labeled directly as such. All you need for that is a tarp, a fan, and then you can see them using dustpans. That is actually rattlesnake master seed. So with rattlesnake master, the chaff doesn't really stick to the seed very much, especially after the threshing. So what they did is they slowly dumped it before the fan, and I didn't get a shot of it, but the heavy seed falls closer to the fan and the lighter chaff falls further. So it separates it. So what we did was the seed and the chaff that fell closest to the fan, we would keep picking that up, run it through the winnow a couple of times, and you got pretty clean seed. Laura said that was actually the cleanest rattlesnake master seed she had ever gotten. And then, of course, the basic old sifting. So the TPC has these brass sifters of different sizes, but you can also do it with basic sieves. So that just separates seed from the debris by the size. So just getting those different sizes, shaking it around, making sure you get just the seed in one part. All right, storing, and here we get into a little bit of graphs. You may not like those as much as I do, but cool, dry, rodent proof. Keep that in mind. So it has been found that this is a little bit of a formula that you can do. Temperature in degrees Fahrenheit plus the percentage of relative humidity needs to be at or below 100. The longevity of the seed is halved for each 10 degrees Fahrenheit that is increased, and is halved for each 1% increase in soil or seed moisture content. You want to make sure that if you're going to be storing the seed for a long time or even over winter, that you keep it in that range. Otherwise, your seed will not germinate. So on the left, you can see from a long-term seed storage study done at USDA NRCS Manhattan Plants Materials Center in Kansas. Oxeye false sunflower on the top left there. The refrigerated germination rate was much higher than the ambient, and then you found a huge difference in Indian grass. So a good way to do that, think about where you keep your seeds typically. If you have a shed, you can keep them over winter outside as long as you keep them up off the ground. If you process the seed yourself and you know for a fact it's really nice and dry, you can even put it in a glass container. You could double bag it, put it in the paper bag and then put it in a plastic bag. Make sure those rodents stay out of it. Just anything you can do to make sure it stays cold, dry, and away from those critters. Stratification. So this might be something you've heard, it might not be. So the more scientific way of saying it, pre-treating seeds to simulate natural conditions that seeds would experience in soil over winter. Pre-treating seeds helps break the seed dormancy and initiate the germination process. So if you're thinking about a prairie during a typical Iowa winter, it's gonna be outside, it's gonna be in the snow, it's gonna be in the cold. Seeds have, I'm trying not to personify plants, but seeds have figured out a way to survive through that and actually use that so that they don't break dormancy early. They wait for different seasonal triggers. So different seeds require different things to trigger their germination. It might even be a combination of things, which is the need for different stratification methods. So you're pretty much simulating Mother Nature when you are doing this. And some seeds absolutely will not germinate or will have a very, very decreased germination rate if you do not do this. So some seeds need that heat signal from when the sun goes down or goes and hits the soil at a certain temperature. Some seeds need a moisture signal. Some seeds, like I said, need to go through an animal or maybe not even go through an animal. So dry stratification, most common. You just need to subject the seeds to temperatures of 32 degrees Fahrenheit for a month or longer. So if you would like to simulate this at home without putting them outside, store the seed in a Ziploc bag in the fridge or in a rodent-proof container in an unheated building over winter for 30 to 120 days. And there are resources to tell you how long that takes. There is a seed stratification guide linked here, but you can also go to other websites like Prairie Moon Nursery. They have seed stratification guides for their species that they sell, things like that. Moist stratification, you will find this very, very common in prairie plants. So you have to expose them to cold, damp conditions to emulate the winter. So if you would like to do this, mix your seed 1-to-1 to moist sawdust or sand, refrigerate at 34 to 38 degrees. Do not freeze it or your seeds may not germinate, and do that for 3 to 4 weeks. And after that, you can sow the seeds in pots or flats. Just don't forget them in the fridge. So scarification, that is one of my favorite ones, and I promise it does not say saccharification. It is scarification, and it's exactly how it sounds. You have to scratch the seed coat to allow moisture to enter the seed itself. So to do this at home, you just need to gently scratch the seed with a sandpaper block prior to planting or to put it into moist stratification. And this is all most common in legume species since the seeds go so deep. So that is that's an example of a seed species that needs to go through the body. So you're just getting through that seed coat. Typically the stomach acids would break the seed coat, but they just need a little extra help. I imagine you could probably do sandpaper as well. It just might be harder because you need that pressure to make sure the seeds don't go flying everywhere. Oh, another tip, if you're gonna store your seeds in like paper bags or sorry, in plastic bags, or if you're gonna make little plastic seed packets, get some dryer sheets and rub that either on whatever you're using to transfer the seed or in the bag so that they don't have that static and you can actually easily move them. Just a little extra random tip there. So these are some additional resources. I want to leave extra time for questions because I know there can be a lot and I can talk on and on and on about this. But these are some of the resources I talked about a little bit. So of course that production manual, the Citizen Science Identification app by Naturalist, Iowa Prairie Network, so the importance of seed storage for seed viability, that's where those graphs came from. That's actually a pamphlet that the TPC gives out and there's a digital version available as well. The Prairie Nursery, where I pulled the Street Seed Stratification Guide, and it looks like they pulled information from Dr. Justin Meisen, who is also at the Tallgrass Prairie Center. And then I included on here a little fun guide, Chris Helzer's Field Guide to Roadside Wildflowers at Full Speed. This book is hilarious and so much fun because, like I said, sometimes you'll be flying past roadside prairie and all of the photos are those blurred roads or roadsides, and it just jokes about how you can identify them that way. But we're not done yet. Bonus quiz question. What is the species on the right? And what method would you use to remove the seed from the fluff? I'll leave it on this slide for a little bit so you guys can keep looking at it. A brush machine, Threshing, that's the word. Is there something you would do after threshing, after grinding those seed heads? Winnowing, fantastic. So the species is flat top aster. And before I head on to the questions, another really funny thing I did want to mention, one of the most requested species, at least what I get at public events, are milkweed. And as we might know, the milkweed comes in those pods, super easy to collect for just the collection side of things. You want to get them before they burst, but we do know that when you open them, they have this compact set of seeds with huge fluff because they go pretty far. Now, the struggle with those guys is separating the fluff from the seed. So what Laura Walter figured out, there are a few methods depending on how frustrated you are with the seed itself. You can get a vacuum or a shop vac, and you can actually vacuum up the seed. The fluff will get stuck to the filter, and the seed will fall to the bottom of the basin. Or if you're super, super frustrated with it, go outside, make sure it's a good day, not too much wind, take a lighter to the fluff, make sure you're ready to put anything out, and it should just burn the fluff right off of the seed. And so these are my contacts. On the right there, you can see actually a professor at the University of Northern Iowa with his daughter. They came out with us to a seed collection event at the Tallgrass Prairie Center where we gathered all of these. We had volunteer seed cleaning events, and then if you get seed packets from the TPC, you very likely got seeds from this event. And it's a fun activity for all ages. So, all right.
Fantastic job, Bree. Wow, what a great presentation. That was fascinating. Let's jump into questions that folks might have for Bree and the whole process here of collecting native seeds and getting them processed.
All right.
Well, I'll jump in here. I'm curious, what's your most challenging? What is the most challenging thing to separate?
Anything fluffy. Oh my goodness.
Okay.
That goldenrod, I swear, the fluff does not want to leave the seed. So like the vacuuming trick will not work with that. That's why you have to thresh it and really grind it in there. Like we were sore the next day after getting it against those grooves. And then you still have to like fluff it out. Oh, masks. I forgot to put that on there. If you are cleaning a lot of seed, wear a mask, just safety wise.
Smart. Excellent advice. Hey, question, what happens if you don't remove the fluff? I mean, what's the harm of just letting it stay?
It may not keep as well. It also takes up a ton of space. So that fluff may hold on to some moisture. You might dry it really well, so it's not a big deal, but a lot of people want to make sure that it stays in a pretty small spot. But if you are just collecting a little bit and want to hold on to it for the next season and you're just going to plant it directly, no biggie, just throw it in there.
Are there any prairie seed libraries where maybe seed is collected and stored?
Huh, that is a good question, actually. I will have to ask around for that. I know the TPC has a pretty good collection of old seed, and they keep it in their deep cooler. And what Laura Walter will do is just to make sure that that seed doesn't expire and lose its germination rate after about 20 years or so. She will check the dates, go through, germinate it, collect the seed, and go back to storing it again just to make sure we have that fresh one and make sure that we put on there like it's generation 2 or 3 from that site. But outside of the TPC having that for the production plots, I don't know. It's a good question.
That was a great question. And I'm not sure that there is a, when I think of a seed library, I immediately think of the Doomsday Vault, the one that's up in the Arctic Circle that's supposed to like have just about not everything, but darn near. So yeah, TPC I think is a good option to get started. Well, maybe with the funding cuts to libraries in Iowa, that is another growth opportunity. We can start native seed libraries as a subset to our book libraries. I love it. Other questions? Oh, here's a question. When is the best time of year to plant indigo seed?
Ooh. So the funny thing about indigo that I didn't get into, the seed collection for that is pretty rough because they have this native weevil, really cute little guys with a little snout that you can see. They're about the same size as the seeds, so you don't get a lot of the seeds. So I know you really want to make sure that they germinate. So I would say the most success that you'll find, especially if you're looking at a small plot and you're not looking to just overseed, in about February, maybe if you have a space in your home or a greenhouse with good lighting, start germinating then. One way that you can do it is if you get like a flat and you don't have a greenhouse or maybe a pot, plant the seeds, wet the soil, and then cover it with plastic, like plastic wrap. I'm not a huge fan of plastic wrap. You can also do it with maybe a clearer grocery bag and just poke little holes in it to keep the moisture in. Go in there, check on it every couple of days, and by about, I'd say March, April, you should have some pretty hardy plants. April, May, go ahead and plant them outside.
Bree, are you familiar with humidity tents?
Not
Almost
super
what you
familiar.
almost what you just explained right there. Imagine a big plastic box with some seeds or seed trays in it, and then kind of a tent over the top of it where we're able to control the temperature and the humidity. That kind of seems like what you were just explaining there to a smaller degree. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Cool.
I kind of aimed the presentation to be a little more small scale and
Oh yeah, yeah,
accessible.
yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I want a humidity tent, not gonna lie.
No, well, you can make them at home with some simple PVC and plastic. Anyways, that'll be a whole nother webinar for another day. Okay. What other great questions do we have? Oh, a tip here. Cut milk jugs work great for little micro greenhouses. Okay.
Perfect. We love upcycling. Oh, if you're out collecting prairie seed, be prepared to come into your car with pocket seed. You don't mean to you don't mean to have it happen, but your pockets will eventually get filled with a bunch of random seed. And some of our favorite things to do, we'll take random upcycled containers, yogurt, sour cream, pop holes in the bottom, and then just throw the seed in there and see what you get.
That is too cool. Oh, here's a question. What prairie plants are good to mix, or what prairie seeds are good to mix, like a wildflower mix? Is there any tips or tricks? Or actually, I'd like to make a real quick plug for the Living Roadway Trust Fund webpage. If you type in LRTF Iowa, you'll come up to the Living Roadway Trust Fund, and one of the really cool tools they have is you can actually make your own seed mix depending on what you want. Do you want a full sun mix? Do you want something that's for soils that are a little more wet or a little drier? Maybe you want only colors, so I want just wildflowers that are yellow or purple or violet, and you can make your own seed mix depending on what parameters you have there. So want to point that out to folks as maybe, I may have stole your thunder there, sorry Bree, but if you have anything else to add.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, actually. I was going to say that when you're looking at a seed mix, it's so dependent on what you want and what kind of soil you have. So a mix calculator that can factor in those things is really what you want to go for. If you want to do a lot of the research and the legwork, you can look up in field guides and recommendations just kind of based on what you've got and make your own adjustments and deductions. You can go for that, but I would highly recommend that seed mix calculator.
Well, and we should point out that the Tallgrass Prairie Center also has some fantastic tools available to you, and then they have a great list of contractors and then seed providers. So just a reminder on that as well.
Mm-hmm.
Time for one more question, if there's one from the audience there. Otherwise, just a reminder that this is going to be recorded. We'll get it up on our YouTube page here as soon as we can. And then, of course, 2 weeks, we're going to be talking about water quality and roadsides. So be sure to check out the Trees Forever calendar, get registered for that webinar. It's going to be another great one. And I'd like to really thank Bree, because this you learn something new every day, folks. That's the whole reason we put these webinars on, and I really feel like I learned something here today. So thanks for keeping it interesting, Bree, and really fun too.
Of course. And before we head off too, I did want to say in the email with that link after this, I'm going to put together a little bit of a summary handout with those resources and things, and just so you can find them, because I know it's a lot to pack in there. Also, for that field day that I have, if you are in the Cedar Falls area, or if you feel like traveling over on the 13th, we're going to go in the morning to Daryl Smith Prairie at UNI, and I might be reaching out to Smith himself to see if he wants to tag along to talk about the roadside program in Iowa. So please, if you are available and would like to come for that on July 13th, that's a Saturday morning, please feel free to do so.
Excellent. With that, we're going to sign off here for another Stewards of the Beautiful Land webinar. Have a great day. Have a great week, everyone. Take care now.
Bye-bye.